How do we find a way forward in these times of crisis? How do we navigate a landscape shaped by violence, inequality, and marginalization? How can we find a path towards dignity? This video series tackles these questions with a radical new framework, Kōjin Karatani's modes of exchange. This framework offers an orientation, a toolbox to understand our turbulent political and economic landscape. In the first video, we met Karatani and his modes of exchange framework. Now, let's dive into Mode A, gift and reciprocity. Mode of exchange A is an act of reciprocity, an exchange of gifts that affirms shared membership in a social group or community. These exchanges initially occurred between groups of people in the context of established social norms. They took place with the knowledge that gifts would be recognized or reciprocated by countergifts of equal value. Gifts and countergifts can be objects, but they can also be symbolic. They can be promises, ways of speaking, forms of dress, or even the gestures we make to greet strangers on the street, signs that we recognize their place in the community, and we expect the same in return. Mode of exchange A ties together our neighborhoods, nationalities, ethnicities, and spiritual traditions. It is the basis of any community we belong to, and the underlying logic of customs and traditions that shape our interpersonal relations. For these reasons, it is often difficult for people to understand it as a precise economic relation, much less as a persistent element of human history. Nevertheless, Mode of exchange A lays a connecting thread from the modern era to the Neolithic tens of thousands of years ago. The earliest complex societies were organized by gift and reciprocity. It was the economic basis of survival, and it allowed us to build social fabric with people who we did not know directly. It laid the groundwork for the formation of tribes. Before the emergence of Mode of exchange A, people lived as nomadic hunter-gatherers. They lived in small bands of family groups, no smaller than what was needed for hunting and no larger than what could handle the equal distribution of food. They could not accumulate wealth because it would be a burden in their travels, and they associated freely. They had no higher social structures, no kings, no chiefs, no religious leaders. They had no reason to stay in a situation that they did not agree with. If inequalities or hierarchies emerged, people could leave their band as long as they had the capacity to hunt and gather what they needed to survive. Even as societies grew larger and more complex and became sedentary, there is plenty of archaeological evidence to show that many people, at times whole societies, returned to nomadism. It is impossible to know why people decided to adopt permanent settlements, but we know that it was not an obvious or linear development. Some communities settled for a few generations and then picked up and left. Some lived in settlements only during certain seasons. Many moved through ideal settlement locations with plenty of naturally occurring food, but continued to live nomadic lifestyles. This is because permanent settlement created the possibility of unresolved conflicts, stockpiling, and therefore inequality. It changed the relationship with the land and made territorial disputes possible. It produced the conditions by which force could lead to power and hierarchy, all of which would have been completely unreasonable to people used to the freedoms of nomadism. With the possibility of desertion so readily available, there was no reason for people to put up with the drawbacks of sedentary life. For settlements and higher order societies to become the norm, there had to be some way to build social cohesion despite the possibility that the tensions of sedentary life might drive unsatisfied families back to previous nomadic ways of living. People had to develop new ways of relating to each other. They had to invent new techniques to deal with conflict and to limit hierarchies and inequality. They had to find a way to organize the distribution of food and resources that would tie a growing population together, a way of developing an obligation or sense of responsibility for the well-being of the community. What emerged was the power of the gift. Under Mode of exchange A, gift giving creates a form of power over the recipient. It creates debt. The debtor must reciprocate a gift in the form of a countergift, or, when appropriate, a symbolic gesture, such as a display of gratitude or even subservience. If the recipient of a gift does not reciprocate adequately, they will likely be marginalized from these exchanges. They will not receive future gifts. The gift produces an obligation. It is not freely given. However, the recipient is free to give gifts themselves and establish power over their own debtors, contributing to a growing network of reciprocal exchanges. The Maori people of New Zealand call the power of the gift the hau. The hau is the spirit of the gift. It engenders debt. It inspires obligation. But the hau is more than just an economic accounting of gifts and counter-gifts. The concept refers to the continuous interchange of life force in nature and with the spiritual realm. It is the mediating relationship that constructs the Maori cosmos. In a sense, the power of the gift holds the world together. The power of the gift serves as the thread that weaves people, clans, and families together and creates a larger notion of belonging. A community shares a set of norms around gift giving that ensures that gifts will be reciprocated in some form across time, distance, and even death. In ancestor worship, we repay our debts to those who preceded us, but also incur debts from the community and from our descendants. Mode of exchange A also incentivizes the expansion of the community. As a community grows, so does the network of reciprocity. The people of the Trobriand Islands west of Papua New Guinea engage in what they call the kula. The kula is a form of trade, but it is distinguished from the exchange of useful goods, the gimwali, which cannot be conducted until after the kula is completed. The kula is used to re-establish relations among people living on separate islands. It reconfirms belonging to the existing confederation of tribes. Gifts received in the kula must be re-gifted in the future, ensuring the continuation of the network of reciprocity. These exchanges represent a sophisticated social institution that ensures material stability and social cohesion across distant islands. Mode of exchange A emerged as a social technique to manage the distribution of resources so that the pitfalls of permanent settlements were minimized and people would feel a sense of belonging and an obligation to a community. It was an innovation that inoculated early society against the tendencies and conflicts that might otherwise have led to the development of inequalities, hierarchies, and state power. In fact, though humans have lived in settlements for more than 12,000 years, at least half of that time we lived without kings or ruling classes. Even after the rise of states, many indigenous societies have lived in complex stateless communities, not because of a lack of technological advancement, but because of highly developed economic and ideological structures that made the transgenerational accumulation of wealth and power nearly impossible. The Iroquois Confederation and the tribes of Mongol are examples of vast land-based societies built on the principles of reciprocity. These were complex civilizations. They engaged in commerce and at times violent domination, but their societies were held together by mode of exchange A. They were composed of independent clans held together by reciprocal exchanges of resources and social standing. A society organized on the basis of mode of exchange A has a structural obstacle to the accumulation of wealth and power. The power of the gift arises from the act of giving itself. Prestige is gained not by accruing wealth, but by giving away useful resources and by doing favors for other individuals, clans, or family groups. Under mode of exchange A clan or individual can become powerful, but they cannot hold on to that power indefinitely, because the act of gaining power, giving a gift, undermines the capacity to gain power in the future, to give further gifts. This contrasts with something like the power of royal authority, which reaffirms itself when it is wielded and can be used to accumulate more power in the future. There is also no profit to be made by trading the power of the gift. Gifts and counter-gifts are always equal in value. The potlatch of the indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwestern coast of North America is a clear example of how power emerges from mode of exchange A. The potlatch is a gift-giving ceremony where the goal is to overwhelm one's rival with generosity. The participants try to give away and destroy more of their own property than their neighbors. The ceremony reaffirms the community's honor, independence, and its identity. It is also where hierarchies within and between clans are worked out. Those that distribute the most resources gain the most prestige. The potlatch establishes hierarchies, and yet it tempers accumulation. Eventually, the state did emerge. Chiefs, kings, religious leaders, presidents, and ruling classes would find a way to accumulate wealth and power in spite of mode of exchange A. We will discuss that history in the next video. Nevertheless, mode of exchange A has persisted throughout, fulfilling an important economic role in people's lives and underlying the cohesion of communities, nations, ethnicities, and more. Mode of exchange A has taken many shapes over the course of history and geography. In a Western society, people partake in relations of reciprocity and belonging with their friends, extended family, neighbors, and with members of communities of identities such as religion, ethnicity, nationality, and race. In these communities, we give and receive the gift of recognition. We acknowledge each other as individuals who conform to certain pre-established norms. These relations determine who is included and who we feel a debt to. They determine access to the community's shared resources, and they often give us a deep sense of connection, of belonging. Of course, not all networks of belonging are equal. Mode of exchange A also regulates the membership of exclusive and elite communities. These closed communities can hold the keys to positions of power in the modern state, to elite education, and to exclusive economic opportunities. In other words, mode of exchange A can also be the basis of exclusion and marginalization. When we do not or cannot engage in reciprocal exchanges, even if it is for reasons outside of our control, we are excluded, we are othered. This is what underlies racialization and other forms of dehumanization, such as misogyny and homophobia. The most important contemporary institutionalization of mode of exchange A is the nation. The nation makes us feel like we are a part of something larger than ourselves because it is based on mode of exchange A. The gift and the counter-gift are a form of recognition. We are recognized as part of the nation, and that recognition gives us a sense of obligation, a feeling of debt to the nation. The recognition also gives us access to the redistributive elements of the modern state. Everything from housing, food assistance, healthcare, and late life security can depend on our ability to demonstrate that we are part of the nation, that we are owed recognition. In the 5th video of this series, we will discuss how the nation is a key element of our modern social formation and how it serves as a backstop to contemporary political and economic relations. When the state is in crisis, it relies on nationalistic fervor to support wars and other acts of plunder and violence. When the economy is in crisis, we turn to the nation to meet needs through mutual aid and solidarity. Nevertheless, mode of exchange A is not the organizing principle of our society. Most of our economic relations are mediated by the state and by capitalist relations. As such, we often experience the repression of authentic social connections. This is why so much of contemporary politics focuses on seeking to recover community and identity in the face of the breakdown of social cohesion. There is more to be said about mode of exchange A. We will return to its contemporary manifestations in video 5 and the lessons it can teach us in video 6. Mode of exchange A is key to imagining how we might create new societies, new networks of belonging. The path forward in these troubling times will not be easy to find, but we know that it will require strong forms of social cohesion and the capacity to organize ourselves effectively without reproducing hierarchy, inequality, or marginalization.